club motto, to dare is to do. At the moment, we're certainly not daring and we're certainly not doing.
Since Thomas Frank's appointment, key factors have defined this campaign and fans aren't happy. Chris Cowlin explains supporter unrest, and Mail Sport football editor Ian Lederman explains how Tottenham can turn things around. Where has it all gone wrong for Spurs? So we start here on the 12th of June. 2025. Thomas Frank replaces Ange Postecoglou as the head coach of Tottenham Hotspur. It's a season where they just recorded 38 points. How did you feel about letting go of Ange?
Well, of course, we had that magical night in Bilbao. Tottenham hadn't won a trophy in 17 years, so it was a delightful evening under Ange. But of course, last season, 22 league defeats, finishing 17th, not acceptable. We needed some sort of calmness, stability in at Tottenham. And Thomas Frank, it was a good appointment. I think it was a good appointment at first. A lot of people were excited by him improving players, getting the best out of players and ultimately driving us forward, and winning the Europa League should have been, or should be, the springboard to more success at Tottenham.
Well, that goes into what you were saying. Ian, he had a 35% win rate at Brentford in 152 games. What did you think at the time of the appointment?
Yeah, I thought it was almost a necessary appointment, because we'd gone from the great love affair which was Gianni Levy and Mauricio Pochettino, which had been brilliant in many, many ways. I love watching that team play. But they didn't win anything. And so they went into the kind of two win-at-all-cost merchants of Mourinho and Conte. Blimey, two Chelsea managers, who would have thought of it? Didn't work, didn't win anything. And you keep spinning and you keep spinning, and then you spin backwards to Ange, which is right, let's go back to the days of kind of fabulous front foot football. And if we can't win, let's enjoy ourselves. And you almost get relegated despite what happened in Bilbao. Until you get to this point where it's like, well, we've got to find somewhere or someone who sits in the middle of all that. And that's what they thought they'd found with Thomas Frank. Someone who had a pedigree as a coach, a good reputation as a man manager, someone who looked like he had the personality and broad enough shoulders to handle being Tottenham manager, and who had the promise to win things at a big club. And as we stand here today, it's not worked. Well,
you listed off a few of the managers there and a few of the different ways that Spurs have tried to kick on. When it wasn't a big name this time, it was someone that had Premier League experience, did it feel like a bit of a necessary reset for you as a fan?
Yes, you could say that. We've gone round in circles though since 2019 of Mauricio Pochettino, going in there in the brand new stadium. We've gone through 6 managers now since 2019, 3 interim appointments as well. So we have gone round in circles, and certainly got it in terms of what Ian said about the managerial appointments. Win now managers, Conte, Jose Mourinho, they didn't get Tottenham over the line, and got the fact that the Tottenham fan base would be, coming alive if he could deliver success, deliver a trophy, which he ultimately did. But when Thomas Frank come in, I think it was all about the calmness and all about, taking us forward, and we should be in a much better position than we are right now.
That takes us on to boring football. Bottom for successful through balls, 4th bottom for total shots, 4th bottom for expected goals from open play. Did you prefer to watch Ange's Spurs or Frank's Spurs?
I think Ange's Spurs was a lot more entertaining. We certainly went for it. You look at that club motto, to dare is to do. At the moment, we're certainly not daring and we're certainly not doing. Ange football, would never have worked. I think it was the right decision for Ange Postecoglou to go, but Thomas Frank football is boring. The fans at the Brentford game were singing boring, boring Tottenham. The XG stats, every stat you look at is really poor, lack of creativity, and people just aren't excited by Thomas Frank football.
So what is it about Thomas Frank's appointment and his football that hasn't worked for them?
They've not won matches. I'm not being facetious, it's the truth. I've been to Tottenham many, many times over the years, not as many times as Chris would have been, but I've been many times to the old stadium, to the new stadium. I know how they like to see teams play, but I tell you what they like more than anything, which is winning matches, because they're football supporters, okay? So don't get me wrong. The start of the season, Tottenham hit the ground running, they beat Burnley at home, and then they win away at Manchester City. Contact of mine, very, very close to Tottenham. Tottenham, buried deep in his soul, knows what goes on at that football club. He rang me up the day after the Burnley game and said, it's Brentford. And he wasn't saying it in a critical way. He was just saying, it's Brentford. I thought it was. I saw it pre-season. It's Brentford football. It's set pieces, it's throw-ins, it's direct football. It's Brentford. And he said to me, if he wins games playing Brentford football, everything will be fine. He said, if he doesn't, he'll be in trouble. And he hasn't. and he's in trouble.
Well, because with Ange, it was, you were losing but playing exciting football. Thomas Frank, you're not picking up points and you're playing boring football. What you were saying there about early stages and understanding that it was similar to Brentford, what were your first impressions on the pre-season tour?
Yeah, I was out in South Korea and Hong Kong, and I think that his man management skills are absolutely excellent. And when I looked at him really closely about him, with the players, really, really good compared to what we've seen in previous years. But I don't think this is all just solely on Thomas Frank, because he does need the players in this team to take the club forward. However, I do feel at this stage that he has lost the fan base, and when you lose the fan base, it's going to be very, very difficult, to get those fans back. And the XG stats are just absolutely awful. We have created Premier League records this season. Lack of creativity, lack of shots on target. The Chelsea game, 1 shot on target in the first half, that is not good enough. And when you're playing at home, you expect to attack, and there is a certain way you play at Tottenham. It's called the Tottenham way. That's why a lot of fans support Spurs, because of the way that we play. There's no identity at the moment, and you don't know what a Thomas Frank team is or what it's meant to do. The players look lost right now.
You talk about the players a lot, and since Pochettino was sacked, Spurs have spent nearly £1 billion on transfers. There's a bit of a myth that Tottenham don't spend on players, and that is just a myth. How much of this, Ian, do you think can be put down to Levy and his dealings?
Some of it, because the squad isn't really good enough at the moment. I thought we were getting there that first season of Postecoglou, when you almost saw that new Tottenham coming together, and I looked at it and thought, blimey, there's something there. Didn't work. Won't look backwards. We're here to look forwards. So since then, they've had a couple of windows. Have not made the most of them. So they've gone into this new model that they've glued themselves to through Johan Lange, the technical director or sporting director, whatever his title is. They've got rid of a lot of the traditional scouts, people who had their feet on the ground. They've gone very heavy on the data. Not the only club to do that. And the policy at Tottenham has been very much to buy young players for the future. Okay, so that's why we've seen players like Bergvall and Odeberg and Gray and others, and now Tell and Simons come through. Okay, but the problem is, you buy players for the future. What happens in the present? Okay, Tottenham lack what I call oven-ready Premier League footballers. They tried to buy one in Solanke, not sure it was a great buy. They bought one in Maddison, good player, very good player. Injuries. Bought one in Brennan Johnson, didn't work. She's moved on to Palace, and at the moment they just look like a squad that's light on know-how. Look at Arsenal's bench at the weekend, okay? Talent all the way through it. What did Manchester City do when a couple of weeks ago when they realised he had a problem? They're going by Semenyo, oven ready, 60 million quid, 26 years old, straight in, ready to play in the Premier League, scores a couple of goals. Tottenham don't do that. So I'm not sure it's about spending money. It's about spending money on the right type of players. And of course there is the other issue of not just spending money on transfers, but spending money on wages, which of course is another thorny topic when it comes to Tottenham and their supporters.
Well, we'll move on to that, because you're completely right, and there are some interesting quotes from the chief executive in the programme at the weekend. Chris, I want to hear from you as well on this then, because Ian is laid out so many of the problems on the board level. Where do you see it? How do you explain it?
Well, I think if we go back to 2019, again, Mauricio Pochettino, he said at the time, we've got this great mansion, you need to put the furniture in it. And we've never, ever put the furniture in it. I think we're still buying from IKEA. So, we need real quality players in this squad. We've gone through so many different managers. Can it keep being the managers, or can it be the way that the club is run and we're not buying in the right players? As Ian said, we're always buying the players for the future. You've got to buy impact players to make a real difference. The last time that Spurs signed a world-class player, in my opinion, you'd have to go back to 1994, Jurgen Klinsmann, bringing in a world-class player. Spurs just don't go down that route. The wage structure does need to change. Vinay has said that, the club are going to address that, and I like that positive message from the board, but they have to deliver. And I know that, they've said as well, time and patience. That is a term that Spurs fans hate, because we seem to hear that every single year under multiple different managers, but there has been so much change at board level, in the dugout, on the pitch, and the fans are just frustrated. They really are.
Well, to go back to that point, the chief executive of Spurs, Vinay Venkatesham, made a really strong statement in the programme at the weekend to fans. A particular excerpt I found interesting was when he said, "We believe in our current squad, but we must add more quality, experience and leadership to compete consistently at the highest level. Doing so requires a more proactive approach to recruitment alongside a wage structure that supports our ambition." Does that excite you?
The wage structure definitely needs to change, because then we can bring in that different calibre of player. Much better quality into this team, because we certainly need it. Where we're sitting in the league table right now, we need to be in a top European spot and challenging for honours year in, year out. Like I said, it should have been a springboard for us, challenging this year and beyond. That parade in May outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was incredible, and we want to feel like that all the time as Spurs fans, and you must inject that quality. As Ian also rightly said about Arsenal's squad, when you look at the depth of their squad to Tottenham's right now, it's like chalk and cheese. So, things do need to change massively at board level, and I just hope they deliver what their message says.
I think you're right, and it's a club that is split on so many things, but change at the top is one of the things they seem to be collective on. Over 10,000 fans have been missing from some home games this season, though. Chris, you've noticed it recently. Have people just had enough?
Yeah, a lot of people that I know actually don't want to go to Tottenham right now because they're finding it boring. They want Thomas Frank gone. As I said, Thomas Frank has lost the majority, if not all, of the fan base, and people are really bored of it right now. And he's not, it's sad times. It's sad times because, as I said, like in the summer, you win the Europa League and everyone should have felt on a high. We sacked our manager, we brought in a new manager, and we want change, positive change at the football club. And when you don't get that, I get a January transfer window is hard, and I do commend the club for bringing in someone like Conor Gallagher, who is got Premier League experience and a real leader. But you need a lot more quality in this squad. But I don't think that the board thought that they would be in this position right now because they want this Thomas Frank appointment to work long term.
Ian, when you see stadiums, half empty, fans, protesting with their feet, does that tend to spell the beginning of the end for the manager?
Often, but I think that there are different layers to what goes on at Tottenham, as far as I'm concerned. I was amazed, by the way, when I saw that there were 15,000 empty seats for that Champions League game, given that Tottenham had worked so hard last season to get into the competition, and then they're not turning up, okay? But I absolutely think, I understand the frustration with Thomas Frank, okay? Of course I do. I'm a fan of his. I like him, I like what he did at Brentford. I think he's working, he's handicapped by missing players at the moment. I think Kulusevski's probably Tottenham's best player. He's not had him. Maddison, others, Solanke, blah, 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 Richarlison, less so. But also, like I say, there are layers to what happens at Tottenham. Historic frustrations with Daniel Levy and the board, not spending wage structure, things that we've talked about before. Daniel never wanted to run his football club the way that other football clubs in the Premier League like to run. They pushed themselves up against financial margins. Daniel would never do that. He made it clear. Now, Tottenham, as far as I see it, don't have to do that anymore. They've got this incredible new stadium that is making money. It is printing money every time they turn the lights on and open the front door. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, they're making the money and they've now got to spend it. Tottenham fans, I think, turn up at the start of every season and they're already a bit hacked off before the season started, and that's because deep down, a lot of them, especially ones like Chris, have been going for years, are carrying with them the burden of previous dissatisfactions about high ticket prices, about a wage structure that isn't competitive at the high level, about a churn of managers. Tottenham fans are used to being disappointed. They turn up at the start of every season waiting to be disappointed. You say they turn up waiting to be entertained. I think you turn up waiting to be hacked off, disappointed, upset. So I think all of the stuff that plays into empty seats and chants about the manager, yes, if you're winning games, it all goes away. Of course it does. But I do think that a lot of that historical frustration is placed on the shoulders of a new Tottenham manager, whoever he is.
And that frustration, you can feel it on the TV, but actually to be there, does it feel toxic from minute one? Or is it not quite as bad as that?
The Tottenham fans have been excellent this season. They're with the team, they're with the manager all the time. And, when at Brentford away, I bring that game up again. Thomas Frank obviously set Tottenham up to play for a 0-0 draw. That is not the Tottenham way, and people were frustrated. The fans actually that night were singing about Heung-min Son, Harry Kane, Aaron Lennon. They were singing about
apparently, I think,
exactly,
yeah.
even him. But as Ian said there about the stadium, in 2019 when we moved into the new stadium, it was meant to be a game changer. We were told by the board then, this is going to be a game changer. Better players would come in, things would be better. And we've waited so long for a trophy. That was a wonderful night in Bilbao. I mentioned it again. But where will we be in the next 10 years? Would we have won another trophy by then? Because we cannot keep making the same mistakes again and again and again.
Absolutely, and I think what we're talking about, the fans, they support the team, but it's a reactive response, really, isn't it? They're not going into it wanting to be annoyed at the football. So I'm wondering to myself, what are the fan expectations at the beginning of each season? Then, I mean, Spurs have been in the Champions League 3 times out of the last 5 years. They've won 1 trophy since 2008, and the biggest fee they've paid for a signing is £65 million, which is nothing compared to some of their rivals. Chris, do Spurs fans over-egg where they should be?
I don't think so. I think that we should always be in a European spot. I think that Tottenham should always be in that conversation, and I would personally like, as a fan, to see us be in the conversation of winning a Premier League title. And we got to the Champions League final in 2019, so Tottenham fans, I don't think, expect too much. We pay a lot of money. We do expect to be entertained and play a certain type and brand of football that we haven't seen this season. And can I just say on Thomas Frank, because he is a good manager, we know that he's a good manager, but I just feel like this is now the wrong fit. Sometimes you can have the wrong manager at the wrong club, and I feel like this is it. Another club, he may do a very good job.
And Ian, what do you think? Do you think Spurs fans are overly ambitious for where they actually are?
I think historically maybe, but I think right now I'm not actually sure, because you only have to walk into that stadium and think, oh, okay, this is a club that's set up. I've had a tour of that stadium. I've been in some of the dressing rooms. I've been in the NFL dressing rooms. That place is like something I've not seen, seriously. And it's working. You only got to look at the numbers. The increase in, or the uptick in matchday revenue is absolutely extraordinary.
That's the thing of it, but they're not seeing the results.
No, so that's what I mean. So with that, I think they're fair to see expectations rise. Doesn't happen overnight, but it's not overnight. They've been in there quite a few years now, as you say. So I think they're right to expect. They won't do the same numbers for shirt sponsorship, for example, as a club like Manchester United. They won't. Okay, that's not. But they can be competitive at that level around those other teams at the top, and they're making money. And I think their fans are quite within the rights to expect them to spend it properly and hire the right manager.
Gentlemen, we reached out to both of you beforehand, asking you whether or not you think Spurs' season can be saved. Chris, I'll start with you. Why do you think it can be? And explain it to me.
Well, I think it can, because Spurs are currently 14th in the Premier League table, and a couple of wins, we could be in that European conversation again. What we don't want to see is a couple more defeats and us slipping down that league table, because Thomas Frank in a number of press conferences has kept saying that, remember where we finished last season, 17th. It kind of sends the message to the Spurs fan base of, well, if we finish 16th or above, then it's a bonus. We should always be looking to European football. So I do think it can be saved if the right decision is made. The Spurs fan base, as we speak, are extremely frustrated. The fact that Vinay Venkatesham and the board haven't made a decision by letting Thomas Frank go, because the club clearly want it to work. But will it work? I don't think so. I think that the season can be saved if Spurs make a change now, and in this second half of the season, we finish in a European spot.
Ian, can Spurs' season be saved?
Yes, I wouldn't change the manager now. I still think there's a good manager in there. I know there's a good manager in there. I think he needs to start behaving like a Tottenham manager. He needs to start talking like a Tottenham manager and stop talking like a Brentford manager, because there's a massive difference. When he got the job, I said, going from Brentford to Tottenham is like taking a goldfish out of a tiny little pond and putting it in the ocean, and you don't know whether it's going to swim or it's going to get swept away. He's been swept away at the moment, largely by results, partly by injuries, and partly by the things that he says and the way that his countenance. Okay, he's got to step up very, very quickly. If he does, as Chris says, it's a bad league. Okay, it's a bad league. Manchester United are 5th. All right, it's a bad. As we stand here on a Monday, Manchester United are 5th. Three wins on the bounce, 4 wins on the bounce can propel anybody up that table. I don't think Tottenham will finish in the Champions League places. That wouldn't be a disaster. They can finish 5th or 6th. That'd be an okay season.
Well, Ian, Chris, thank you very much. We've heard what you have to say. Spurs fans, let us know in the comments below what you think. Should Thomas Frank be replaced at Tottenham, and is there any chance of saving your season? We'll be back next time on The Pitch. And if you like The Pitch, make sure you check out The Hook with Charlotte Daly over in Mail Sport Boxing. Just click the screen and it'll take you to it.